Hey, how do you feel about some high rarity cards, or maybe some foreign ones, or maybe be ahead of the game with others by preparing for future set releases with very quick shipping? Check out EJ Gaming and use code British5 on checkout for 5% off on all your orders. Link in the description.
Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. So Age of Overlord is slowly approaching. We're less than 2 weeks away from the official release. We already know all the rarities, all the TCG exclusives, all the OCG imports. But despite us knowing the entire roster of the set, there is still a lot of things to cover. There's still a lot of strategies that can be like obtained or unearthed when it comes to like all the new cards being released in this set. I truly believe that Age of Overlord is going to be a format changing set. I think that the format that we're at right now is just a small inkling of what's to come after this set's release. So earlier this week, we've been covering a couple of themes that are being shown as new potential engines or archetypes, and the first one we covered was Horus. One thing that I brought up when I made the Horus video, and if you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to check it out. I do talk a lot in depth about how the cards are worth it, like as an engine in a dedicated strategy. So one of the things is that Horus really works well as a engine for decks that really like to stun your opponent. When it comes to like how the Horus cards are designed, the main function of the Horus cards is to punish your opponent for trying to get rid of your resources. And one deck that is really strong and really like forces your opponent to like play into your resources is Runics. In the past, we've seen that Runic strategies have done well in the past. One thing that we know about Runics is that it is an engine that is really good when it comes to like stunning your opponent or like stopping your opponent on the spot. It is an engine that doesn't have room for non-engine. However, you have a lot of utility cards that just serves as multiple functions in order to like stop your opponent, like Runic Destruction, popping spell and traps, like the freezing curses, like negating monsters, the flashing fire, getting rid of your opponent's monsters. However, Runic as a strategy with its win condition to deck out the opponent is something we don't see very often. The main reason for that is because there is no supplementary engine that can be played alongside the Runic cards that really fixes a lot of the issues that the Runic deck has as a whole. The closest we've gotten to it was the Naturia engine. However, with the limitation of Naturia's Sacred Tree, this strategy or this hybrid has lost a lot of play. It has been way less popular because it is a lot less consistent. This goes back to like the Horus cards. So the thing that Horus does that really like benefit this theme is that one, they punish your opponent for trying to get rid of your resources. Two, they provide bodies on the board that can be used to either A, facilitate you into your Runic cards a lot easier, B, get rid of your opponent's resources outside of the battle phase, C, pretty much apply pressure and give you an extra win condition in the off chance you cannot win with your Runic spells, and D, give you recursion and like pretty much like sustainability for your Runic cards in the off chance your opponent tries to stop the cycle of your Runic cards from being continued. Like one example that I can give you is that in the off chance your opponent tries to get rid of Runic Fountain and you have like Happy on the board, the Happy can make it so whatever you lost involving your Runic cards can go back to your hand, and then you just have your Runic engine for next turn, and it pretty much forces your opponent into like trying to contest your board. Otherwise they're just going to get very punished. Another example would be Duamutef. if your opponent tries to get rid of a card on the board, the dual motif will draw you cards, meaning that it makes it so like you get more into your runic cards a lot easier. It makes it so you can apply more pressure to your opponent. And in the off chance your opponent does nothing, because that is one glaring weakness that runics have, where your opponent just tries not to play the game and just like have you have to just deal with your only established board until like they can actually play the game, then it's really really problematic for them as well, because what you can end up doing is that you can use your Horus cards to like get you to more and more card advantage with your runics, and you can start summoning like other monsters and pretty much just put your opponent in a position where they pretty much have to deal with your runic cards, otherwise you're just going to end the game on the spot like the next following turns. Like you can summon the Giant Coach King Giant Trainer to just draw more cards. You can summon the Cypher monster in the off chance your opponent tries to contest the board and just start picking apart their board that way. You can summon like the Titanic Galaxy to just stop cards that your opponent can have that could really just stop your cards on the spot. The Doomsday Nemesis. This is a card we haven't talked about in this channel as of yet. I think this is a good topic for us to bring up this card. Essentially, this card, what it does is that if your opponent summons from the extra deck more than once, you can use any monster to summon this. And this card is really, really strong because it pretty much freezes any effect of really high level monsters. So, like for example, you're facing a deck that just summons a lot of problematic box monsters like Manadium or like Infernobles, just to give you an example. Then the Doomsday Nemesis is just really really strong because it really stops all those cards from like really trying to contest against you, and it makes it easier for you to use your runic effects and just start picking apart your opponent's board like in some shape or form. Another really cool thing about this deck is that this deck can make stuff like Chaos Angel. Like for example, Hugin plus Imseti can just make you the Chaos Angel, and it will have both effects because Hugin is a light monster and Imseti is a dark monster. Another really cool thing that you can do in this deck is that, like, I don't have it here in this extra deck, but another thing you can do is play Dragoblion and play like the Dragoblion Numeron OTK. That really punishes your opponent from trying not to play the game and just letting all your monsters like roam freely. But yeah, this is just like the super concept behind it. You have Sarduya that can just draw you to a lot of cards. You have Underworld Goddess instead in the case they summon something that is really really hard to out. And it's really easy to summon once you get your Horus engine established. A lot of people are talking about SP Little Knight. I don't think I need to talk about this card. I will make a video on it because I think there's a lot of things to cover when it comes to a card like this one. But in this deck, it's really, really strong because you can use your runic monsters as material for it, and it gives you the extra banish effect. And the off chance your opponent tries to contest to your already established board, this card can also just moves itself out of the extra monster zone, meaning that you have a free zone for your runic monsters to be summoned again. Another thing that SP Little Knight does is that it forces your opponent into trying to contest against your cards, because in the off chance that they cannot, you are just going to like get more and more card advantage and just like get rid of your opponent's boards entirely. And in the off chance your opponent actually does contest to this, then he's just going to get punished with your Horus effects. But yeah, the reason you see the max out amount of runics is because like you just want super consistency with this deck. This deck is really really good at just drawing into your engine. One small issue with the Horus cards is that you don't have a way to search the sarcophagus outside of MCETI. So until Phantom Nightmare arrives, we don't have a way to just open consistently the Horus engine every single game. However, you play so many Runic cards that you are pretty much almost always going to open a way to your Runic strategy, and that's really, really good for you because it pretty much means that your Runic cards will draw you into your Horus cards, and in the off chance you don't draw into your Horus cards, then you can just play the game and just use your Runic cards to like stifle advantage over your opponent. The way you win with this deck is not by beating down your opponent despite you already having a lot of high level monsters. The way you're going to win the game is pretty much like decking out your opponent. That's why you see a maximum amount of these Runic spells, including the Golden Droplet and maxed out copies of the Smiting Storm. Volcanic Shell is in this deck because it's basically discard fodder. It's both a discard fodder for Hugin and it's a discard fodder or send fodder rather for the Pharaonic Sarcophagus. It makes it so you just cycle through your deck a lot easier. It gets you to your other cards as quick as possible. It's pretty much like Upstart Goblin in that regard. You can also play Upstart Goblin in this deck. The card I chose to play outside of that was Pot of Avarice. Pot of Avarice is really strong in this deck because you can recycle your Volcanic Shells and just keep amassing more card advantage. It gives you 2 free draws, so it draws into your Runic cards, and in the off chance that you are already like cycling through your Runic monsters in your extra deck as well as your other monsters like your XYZ or your Link monsters, you can just put them all back as well. You don't need to put back your Horus cards, however it is something you can also do if you're desperate for more draws. Overall, I think this is like not an incorrect approach. You can just put Upstart Goblin instead of this. This is pretty much like a textures idea that I had in mind. When I spoke about Horus, I spoke about the Tachyon Dragon and the Transmigration. This is a really strong card in this deck because if your opponent is playing like a chain blocking strategy like the Chimera deck, for example, you can activate Transmigration and this card is pretty much a blowout. It pretty much just cancels everything that is activated before this card, and this card is super easy to set up. All you need is to summon the Tachyon Dragon, and in this deck you can just summon the Tachyon Dragon with just 2 Horus monsters. If your opponent is unfamiliar with this card, they're just going to play into it and you're just going to amass a lot of advantage. Another really cool thing about this card is the moment your opponent sees this card being activated or resolved, you can easily bluff the Tachyon Dragon, and in a deck where you draw a lot of cards, like it's really hard for your opponent to call out the bluff without them being punished for it. So this is another really cool thing that you can do in this deck. But yeah, I hope you understood like everything that's going on. I'm going to show you a replay. I'm not playing the Horus deck in this replay. I'm playing TG, but I am playing against somebody who is playing the Horus deck, and you're going to see that it's just super problematic for me. Like when this deck just pops off, like you can see, Ghost Mourner is like the only hand trap I open in my hand, and the Ghost Mourner is not going to be enough to just stop everything this guy's doing. The guy summoned Munin, which is a really strong card. You see him like resolving the sarcophagus. You see them just summoning all the Horus monster, and he just passes turn. This is a really strong board because he's playing Ash Blossom in his build. You can play Ash Blossom in this deck as well. That's another thing that you can do. But if you look at the board right now, like there's not a lot you can do here. Like the only real blowout that can really contest against this board is evenly matched. Like you can't Lightning Storm these monsters because the sarcophagus protects them from card effects. If you try to Lightning Storm the back row, you're only going to trigger the other Horus cards. and that's a lot of card advantage that they're getting. Like this gets back 2 cards, this draws 4 cards, like it's really just strong. This makes it so you cannot target anyone afterwards. This will make it so that you can get rid of your opponent's card. And it's just really problematic if you try to play into it. Like if you're trying to play into their cards, it's just going to make it so they can activate whatever runic they have left. They have the runic destruction in hand. They already have golden droplets in the graveyard, so they can just put back the draws. But yeah, like here I'm trying to play the TG deck. I'm trying to like see if I can establish a board. I'll make another video talking about like the TG stuff, because this is a deck I have been testing out besides the Horus deck. So we're doing just TG things. I'm pretty much just letting the duel roll out, because I want to get to the following turn, just so you can see just what this guy is going to do against my board. Take note, this is like initial testing of me playing the TG deck, so I'm probably not playing the deck the most optimally. So that's one thing that could be like circumvented. I'm just trying to see if I can draw into cards like, for example, the Ash Blossom. See, so here in my opponent during the end phase, he Runic Destructions. I opt not to use the Ash Blossom because I feel like the Ash is going to be more necessary in like the following turn. And now he just starts to pick apart my cards. Now I lost 4 cards out of my deck. There are 18 cards left. He's going to draw 2 cards from the fountain, and he draws into more runic spells. And now this is where it gets really problematic. Now he just summons the Coach King, and if I don't do anything about this Coach King, he gets 3 free draws. However, if I do something about the Coach King, he gets the Happy effect. And pretty much just start grabbing cards back from the graveyard. He can grab back the Ash Blossom, for example, and that's just really strong. So here I Veiler, but Veiler really doesn't bother him, because now he can just detach all the Horuses. He can bring back all the Horus cards. Now he activates another destruction, that's going to make me lose 4 more cards. And now he tries to Smiting Storm. Smiting Storm is really strong, because now he can banish 3 more cards unless I do something. Well, banish 4 cards rather, because I do have the Trident Launcher. Here, I try to get rid of my TG cards. Like, I'm just trying to make it so he gets as little value as possible out of the Smiting Storm. However, like, just banishing 2 is strong. I set the TG close. He Asteroid Freezing Curses. He banishes 3 more cards, and he just puts back all the cards. Well, I tried to Ash Blossom that. So now what he's trying to do is he trying to like try to pick apart my board. He can only target the Trident Launcher. He cannot target the TGX because of Trident Launcher's effect. However, if I try to use the TGX effect, he can just try to use Inseti's effect, and he can use Happy's effect. And yeah, that's like pretty much like what I brought up. Like, it's really hard to stop Horus once it gets his engine rolling. Now he can just summon the Cypher Blade, and the Cypher Blade can try to pick apart another card. Like, this package is really strong. This is just 3 free cards that your opponent just had out of 2 level 8s, and it kind of gets rid of multiple cards. And if I try to contest to this Cypher Blade with the TGX, he's just going to get more cards back. So I'm pretty much in a already losing position. He summons Dragobleon. The Dragobleon will make it so he can summon the Hope Heartbringer. So this is another thing that you can play in the extra deck. And yeah, this game is pretty much over. Now he summons back the Duamotef because he didn't summon it yet. And yeah, like this is just pretty much the end of the game. Like, me and him were talking about the deck. We were talking about a lot of cards in theory that we can be played in here. So yeah, this is a really strong contender. I think if you are a Runic player, or a player that really likes the Runic strategy, I think this is an engine that you should really look into. Because, I mean, if you saw something from this duel right here, this is really strong when it resolves. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me. I hope you found this video informative. I hope you found it to your expectations. Keep practicing and keep dueling.